everybody. Tonight I wanted to do a story time about the time when my stepdad moved in with a murderer. Now, my stepdad Mark obviously at the time didn't know that his roommate Wayne was a murderer. That only came out many years later. But to set the scene, my stepdad was in his mid to late 20s, and he was going to our local community college to get the 2-year degree for his engineering studies that he was looking for. And this allowed him to get part of his degree at a better price, obviously, and then transfer to a school to get his degree. So while Mark is in engineering school at our local community college, he meets this guy in his class who is substantially older than the rest of the students. But Mark befriends him, and they end up actually becoming very good friends. Mark's new friend, his name is Wayne. Wayne Gulley, Gulley. Now, Wayne was in his 50s. Like I said, he was substantially older than most of the kids, or I shouldn't say kids, adults in the engineering course. But him and Mark ended up starting a really good friendship. They studied together, hung out together. Mark said Wayne was a super cool dude. They had a lot of the same interests, and he was easy to get along with. So when it came time for them to graduate from this college, Wayne offered to go to other colleges with Mark to help him see where he wanted to go. Mark ended up looking at California University of Pennsylvania, and a couple other local schools, but none of them were the right fit. So Wayne had actually suggested to Mark that he look at Southern Illinois University. Wayne was originally from Illinois, and he said he knew about the school, and it was a nice school with a good engineering program. So Mark says, heck yeah, let's go. Mark hops in the car with Wayne and goes to tour this school. Ends up loving the school. So Mark enrolls and ends up moving in to a rented house with Wayne and Wayne's girlfriend. Now, a little bit of backstory on Wayne's girlfriend. Wayne's girlfriend was married when Wayne met her. One of them had actually responded to the other's personal ad. So Wayne's girlfriend at the time was married to a preacher. She ended up leaving the preacher and dropping her life and moving with Wayne to Illinois to start everything over. Now at this point that Mark had known Wayne, Mark did know that Wayne was a little bit weird, but it was never anything other than just odd. Wayne was married 8 times, which Mark said in hindsight's kind of a red flag, but people were strange. So Mark moves into this house with them, and Mark had the top floor as his space. Wayne and his girlfriend had the middle floor as their space, and then the bottom floor was the common area. So Mark's living with them for about a year, and Wayne offers Mark a job over breaks and helps Mark out with making some money while he's in school. And Mark ends up doing some wiring for Wayne, who I guess was an electrician or did something with electrical, and he was a contractor with construction companies. So Mark had gotten a few jobs with Wayne, and life was good. They were still great friends, and enjoyed living together. Well, Mark ended up moving home during his summer break, and told Wayne, hey, listen, I'm not paying for a house that I'm not living in. Go ahead and rent my room. So Wayne ended up renting out Mark's room, and all was fine and dandy. Mark, when he did come back, ended up moving with his then girlfriend, and and says, "Hey, can you run over to my house, pick this up for me, and bring it to me?" So Mark gets over there. He said it was a weird situation, but it wasn't like, it was awkward. It wasn't like creepy or anything. He said the girlfriend or the wife wasn't hitting on him, but it was just strange. So Mark gets whatever it was and leaves, and then ends up meeting up with Wayne later and giving it to him, where Wayne ends up confronting him and accusing Mark of trying to sleep with his wife. The whole situation ends up blowing over. But it wasn't until recently that Mark had found out a lot of really weird details about Wayne, some of which I had actually brought to his attention after having watched the episode of Deadly Affairs on the Wayne Gulley Story. For those of you who are interested, the Wayne Gulley Story is on Discovery Plus under the show Wicked Attractions, and the episode is season 6, episode 4, called Straight Through the Heartland. Now, before Mark had known Wayne, Wayne had lived a very different life. Back in the 70s, when Wayne was in his mid-20s, he was married and had a kid. Well, one day they needed to have a babysitter come over for their child, and Wendy shows up. Now, Wendy had come from a broken home. Her dad was a total abusive alcoholic, and her mom was a total alcoholic, but she drank to cope with the abuse from Wendy's father. So she was basically just a drunken doormat. Wendy takes a job working for Wayne and Wayne's wife, and Wayne soon falls madly in love with Wendy. Well, Wendy was 16, and she was enamored by this older man who was showing her so much attention. She ends up falling in love with him too. Wayne ends up leaving his wife and having a relationship with Wendy after they had a very torrid affair. So Wendy ends up taking Wayne to her senior prom, and, people are looking at them kind of strange because there is a large age gap. Again, she was only 16 whenever they met, and he was in his mid to late 20s. So as time goes on, Wayne actually ends up becoming abusive towards Wendy. He is just verbally and emotionally abusive, always berating her, telling her she can't cook, she can't do this. She was just absolutely awful. Well, then it turned physical, and Wayne would shove things in Wendy's mouth. Like one night she was making dinner, he told her dinner sucked and just basically shoved it in her mouth. So it's safe to say that their relationship had lost that spark. Well, Wendy was so beaten and downtrodden at this point that she honestly believed that things were her fault. So she was trying to make the relationship strong again and wanted to do anything to help Wayne fall back in love with her. So Wayne convinced Wendy to allow him to watch while she has sex with another man. Wayne was definitely into voyeurism. So Wendy agrees and attempts this. Well, Wendy and the guy are having a very hard time with this because it's kind of awkward. The lady that you're sleeping with, her husband is sitting there watching you. Wasn't working out so well for them. So the guy leaves. Wendy's in tears. Wayne is trying to be oddly comforting, but also upset that it didn't happen. So he tells Wendy that they're going to do it again. But this time, Wayne is going to hide in the closet and watch them through the closet, giving it that little bit of a creep factor on his part. So they proceed to do this again, and Wayne is hiding, and Wendy is trying her hardest to please Wayne, but she can't. She's having a very hard time with it all. So, at this point, Wendy is already drinking a lot, and Wayne ends up getting her hooked on drugs. So now Wendy is always drunk and or high, and she's basically his puppet to do with as he pleases. So Wayne convinces Wendy to start swinging. They end up meeting up with a swinging couple, and they swap. And Wayne is just absolutely thrilled, and just, it's everything he wanted it to be, because he gets to watch his wife have sex with another man, but then she also has to watch him have sex with another woman, which obviously was not what Wendy had wanted, but Wayne was just through the roof about this opportunity. So they swung for a little while. Wendy was still hooked on all the drugs. Again, it was the 70s, so it's not like it was hard for them to come by. Then, after a couple of years, I do apologize for that loud vehicle. After a couple of years, Wayne and Wendy are, looking still for that spark, and they end up pulling into a lover's lane. Well, at the lover's lane, there just so happened to be a car there with 2 young adults in it. Now, Wayne had pulled up behind them, leaving the lights on to kind of blind them, make it a little harder for them to focus. He pulls up and he gets out of the car and he walks up to the driver's rear window and knocks on it. And the gentleman inside rolls the window down and asks Wayne what's up, and Wayne proceeds to ask for directions. So the kid gets out of the car and he starts giving directions to Wayne, and then all of a sudden Wayne pulls out his pistol and cracks him over the head with it, knocking this guy out. So while this guy is knocked unconscious, Wayne opens the guy's trunk, stuffs him in it, and closes the trunk. So now this gentleman is stuck. He has no way to get out. And gotta remember, it was the 70s. There were no emergency releases for the trunk. So he's stuck in there. They end up pulling his girlfriend out of the car and kidnapping her. Now, I cannot remember where they took the girlfriend, but wherever they took her, they ended up raping her and torturing her and making her plead and beg for her life, which they ultimately took anyway. Now, Wayne, when he was ready, took out a large knife and just plunged it into this woman's side, collapsing one of her lungs and making it extremely torturous and difficult for her to breathe. Now, this woman is pleading for help and take me to the hospital and help me, please. And she's pleading to Wendy, hoping that because Wendy is also a female, that there will be some sort of feminine connection there where they can, she can convince Wendy to take her to receive medical attention. Well, Wendy is high as a kite, as she usually was, and Wayne hands her the knife and says to finish her. So Wendy ended up plunging the knife deep into the woman's chest, killing her. Thankfully, at least putting this poor woman out of her misery, as opposed to letting her die a slow and agonizing death. So after all of this, they realize they have a body that they have to dispose of. So they end up, over the course of a couple of days, cutting her into pieces and then disposing of her in different locations to make it harder for them to be caught. Meanwhile, all this is happening while the boyfriend is in the trunk of his own car. He was able to punch out one of the tail lights and stick his arm out and flag down the property owner. And the property owner comes, helps him out. They call the police. He describes, what happened, and the police can't do anything about it because the description is very vague. But they keep a lookout for this to happen again. Well, Wayne and Wendy had decided we're never doing this again. It was too much. We went too far. That's it. We'll take the secret to our graves. So, after some more time together, Wendy and Wayne end up splitting up. Wendy was still enamored with Wayne, but she couldn't take the abuse anymore. So she says, I'm done. We're divorcing. Wayne is still trying to actively convince her to stay with him, even though Wendy's 3/4 of the way out the door at this point. After a few years, Wendy's in a new relationship that's actually stable and healthy. The guy has a good job, he's kind to Wendy, and, he loves her unconditionally. But Wendy can't get over Wayne. Now, Wendy ends up calling Wayne and asking him to meet for lunch. He does. So they meet up, and Wendy's saying, I miss you, we should try again, blah, blah, blah. Well, Wayne says, no, I'm married. I don't want to be with you anymore. So Wendy is rejected, feeling scorned, and she goes to the police. Wendy lays everything out on the table for the cops. About what started this, Wayne's abuse, and then leads up to the murder. Well, Wendy ended up knowing details that the police had never released, so the only way she would know it is if she was there. So the police are taking her very seriously. They go and pick Wayne up. Now, the police would even say in the episode of, Fatal Attractions or Wicked Attractions, that Wayne was a stereotypical engineer. He had the big nerdy glasses and a pocket protector. Well, Wayne still to this day claims his innocence, even though there's so much evidence to prove otherwise. I believe it was in 2013 that they were arrested. Wendy only served 15 years because she ended up cooperating with the police and bringing Wayne in. She took a plea, and Wayne will likely never see the light of day outside of a jail again, which thankfully, and that poor woman's family at least got a little bit of justice, although I'm sure that they wanted more. So after Wendy was released from prison, with all the drugs and abuse that she had been, dealt throughout the years, she couldn't cope, and she ended up in a mental institution. Wendy was an unfortunate victim of a man that she thought she loved, but who was just a victim of her circumstances and her surroundings, and she fell into it with the wrong man. If you guys are interested, like I said, the episode, I think it's called Wicked Attractions. It's on Discovery Plus, and it is season 6, episode 4, titled Straight Through the Heartland. Now, apparently, I had kind of met Wayne, I guess, and my mom definitely did, a few years after Mark graduated college. There was a reunion, so my mom packed me and all her stuff up, and we drove out to Illinois for the weekend and met Wayne. Now, my mom says that Wayne was a super nice guy, definitely not somebody you would have expected to be a murderer, but he was. Anyway, Mark had no idea that Wayne was this person, until a few years later. One of his buddies from the Navy, I think it was, who had also known Wayne, told him, hey, did you see the news? Wayne was arrested. So Mark ends up finding the article, looking it up, and lo and behold, Wayne was arrested for murder. And that was the time that my stepdad moved in with a murderer, unbeknownst to him, and actually had a close close friendship with him for a few years. But yeah, it took Wayne's girlfriend something like 30 years to finally confess what they had done. She said over time that it just weighed on her, and she could not go on living with such a guilty conscience, and she wanted to give the family the justice that they deserved. Again, check out that episode of Wicked Attractions. It's super cool. It is a little dated, but the crime itself took place in the 70s, so it's all kind of dated. But yeah, it's super interesting, so give it a watch.